Welcome to the Curated Craftsman, a podcast where we'll learn about the hands, head, and heart behind creative entrepreneurs just like you. Kate Cook is the artistic drive behind Asphalt Canvas Custom Art and your host for this conversation about art, business, and belief.
Hey guys, thank you so much for tuning in to the Curated Craftsman podcast. Today I have a good friend with me. His name is Jake Maier, and we'd like to welcome him here tonight. We're going to have a great conversation. I have a good feeling about this one.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey, this is a specifically cool episode because we haven't had like a metal worker on the podcast yet. And I know you have so many thoughts about craftsmanship, and I guess overarching, like you are a craftsman. So I'm excited to have you here. If somebody asked you, like, what do you do for a living outside of you? I know you have a day job. What would you say?
I mean, in short, it's probably just sheet metal fabrication and then art, essentially. I mean, I've only built a couple cars, or my one main car, but I love art. I love creating. I love creating with my hands, and that's literally like, definition of a craftsman. I've learned over the last probably couple of years that I need to hone in on what I want to do, because there's just everything. I mean, there's so many things I want to create. There's so many ideas that I have, but there's only so much time in one day. So it's tough to do them all. So I like to tell people just sheet metal fabrication. It's people come at me with wanting to build them a gate or a fire pit, or anything with metal and welding. And yeah, that stuff's cool. It's just not my cup of tea. I'd rather put my energy elsewhere.
Okay, so would you say that you primarily work like in the automotive space?
I wouldn't really limit to that. I kind of started more or less in art, like bead rolling, and 2015-ish. I kind of got started in that, and that's kind of when I started building my first car. Started really diving into just fabrication in general, and kind of when I got a little bit more onto social media, you start following people, you see inspiration, you want to do more things, and I started seeing a lot of the bead rolling stuff, and that was the first real tool I could afford. So I, of course, bought one and just started going with the bead rolling stuff, and started off with just pictures, whether it be hand drawn, whether it be a stencil that I trace onto a piece of aluminum, and then bead roll it and then create it and frame it. And of course, that was just kind of my thing for, probably a good year or so, maybe over that. And then it just kind of evolved into doing interiors for cars, but using the same concepts of aluminum, and then you just add different elements to it, three-dimensional elements like breaking and shaping, bending, stuff like that.
Could you, for the people that listen to this that don't really understand what bead rolling is, can you explain what that is to people, what bead rolling is?
It's stretching the metal is what it's doing, and you have two dies that are, call them 2 inches in diameter. The easiest thing to imagine is two skateboard wheels that are kind of offset like this, and the top die is adjustable with pressure to come down, and you also adjust your top die for your gap, and that's how you create different profiles, whether you're doing lettering or really any pattern you want. But it's tough because the way metal moves and the way I've learned things is you can only do so much in so much of a space.
The different types of metal, I would imagine, make a big difference on that, the way it moves around and things like that.
Yeah, aluminum is softer. Copper is very soft. Steel is much more dense, and stainless is like rolling concrete. It doesn't move. It's tough stuff. Yeah, the top die is it's gear driven. You have a foot pedal, so you can change your speeds. They make more sophisticated ones than other ones, but I've seen some really cool homemade ones, and guys put out really, really cool art with them. And it rolls the panel through, and you just rotate the panel to follow your lines. And it takes, if you see somebody that has a design, for example, like the Coca-Cola emblem, if somebody wanted to roll that and start making it three-dimensional and stretch the lettering up, it may take 5, 6, 7 passes on that. It's not just one pass all the way around. And it's slow passes. You got to move the metal very slowly, otherwise you get a ton of distortion in the metal, and then you end up with this tweakoed panel.
That's okay. So that's great. This is already a question I wanted to ask you, but thinking of like the Coca-Cola logo on your Instagram, you have a little quote that says like, it's only metal. And that makes me think, does he have, like, I think that's a really cool concept when you look at your craft. It's only a canvas, it's only metal, because that means that you're willing to like work with it as it moves and changes. Or if it looks bad, like, let's take the Coca-Cola logo. Like, do you have to restart everything if you go over it a second time and like miss the line, or is there a way to fix that?
So that's the downside between art and I guess like a structural panel. It's
Hmm.
and I know this much, and when it comes to metal shaping, there's guys out there that are absolute geniuses and whatnot. So keep that in mind. Everything I'm saying, take it with a grain of salt because I'm still learning a lot. Hopefully, people don't come at me for misspeaking, but this is just what I understand and know.
Yes.
But with metal, you can only do a handful of things with it. You can only shrink it, you can stretch it, you can bend it, and you can shape it pretty much. And if you think of, a bend is going to be like a 90-degree bend. And then of course, shrinking it is going to be, I always tell people think of dough or Play-Doh or something like that. If you bring it all together, it's going to bunch up, it's going to get thicker. If you stretch it, it's going to move apart, it's going to get thinner. And if you think of that on like a molecular level, it's all those things are moving around. So when you're doing all those different things to a panel and you're applying all this different shape to it, you
Yeah.
got to understand what's going on within that panel, what that metal is trying to do.
Like this actual structure of it. I could see then where it becomes like, okay, well, this is like if somebody came to you and said, well, this is what I want for my door interiors, or for instance, like the tunnel ram thing that you did over that guy's transmission. Like if he wanted some crazy fleur-de-lis design, I would imagine you have to kind of coax him into a more structural design. I never really put that together until just now.
Yeah, it's you can only cram so much,
Huh.
you call it movement or shape into a small area. If you have a bigger area, you can move it around a little bit more. But I'm sure you've seen like the guys that work copper with like the copper smithing and everything,
Oh
and it
yeah,
starts
yeah.
off as a sheet. Yeah, and they start bringing it out to where that flat sheet, it was flat, and then if you bring it up or put it on the table, it grew 2 inches with all this different shape in there. So you're constantly balancing that fine line of when you're stretching that material, you actually don't tear it. So to
Wow.
kind of circle back what you're talking about with how do you fix something if you mess it up?
Yeah.
Sure, there's ways of fixing it, but a lot of the aluminum or copper work that I do, it's a shiny finish. It's you will see any little tiny
Mm.
imperfection on there. So the real way to if you overstretch it, sure you can shrink it back to its original state, but it's going to mar the metal. It's going to do different things in it. So then you got to refinish the metal, whether it's polishing, sanding, and all that. It just adds time to it. Then it's not a uniform finish across the board.
Okay, so okay, this is just in this 5 seconds we've been talking. This makes way more sense now because I'm applying it to when I took like a ceramics class, and on the wheel you're building the pot up as it's spinning, and the material's getting thinner and thinner and thinner. But if you mess it up, you can collapse it all down again. But then the clay is like all got all these weird little crinkles and stuff in it. But that could be a benefit in pottery. But still,
Yeah.
I understand this. Okay. And so similarly, on your Facebook page, you had that you specialized in dimple dyes, which I know you used a lot with the project we did together, which we'll talk about. But is that a very similar concept to dimple dye? Can you explain what that is?
It's just a die that if you take a flat piece of steel, there's a couple different versions of a dimple die. The kind that I use, all you just drill your pilot hole, then that's essentially your guide. So that goes through there, and then you actually take the top part of the dimple die that has a radius, and then the bottom die, which is the call it the female version of that, and you sandwich the two together. And what it'll do, it'll cut whatever size hole you want in there, whatever size the die is. Typically, they're in quarter, half-inch increments on the diameter. Then you press them together, it'll cut that hole, and then at the same time, it flares that edge as a radius.
Okay,
And they
wow.
have that's called a punch flare.
And so to bring that full circle to let people kind of know how we kind of always knew of each other because we did car shows and stuff and we would see each other, my husband and you guys have cars and stuff as well. And but so I did like an aviation inspired portrait, kind of just said like, hey, if we could do something that's a little bit like vintage airplane inspired, and then I just kind of let you do whatever you did, and it turned out so cool. And I was able to just slide this aviation portrait with like it had an American flag and some airplanes and an insignia of this man's career, one of the patches he wore. it just slid right into this gorgeous frame. And Jake used he asked me if I wanted to use copper rivets or black rivets. He was able to really customize the look to the artwork. And then, like I said, it just literally without us meeting, he built it so that my canvas slid directly into this frame. And it's an amazing experience because the guy that got the artwork was a massive craftsman, mechanic type minded guy. And he just really appreciated the effort and the talent that went into both pieces, the art and the frame.
Well, thank you. I mean, thank you for reaching out for me to do it, because it really got to flex my creativity and something I've always wanted to do. And it's tough to have the drive to build something for yourself, because it's just like, whatever, but when you get to build it for somebody else, it has that much more meaning. I love it.
Yes.
So
I wonder if you've noticed this on custom stuff, because I've definitely noticed this in my own career, but do you notice somebody that comes to you for like a custom piece, and in your own life you would have never thought of doing that, or you would have been like, I could never do that. Yeah, let's try it. Like there's so many pieces I've done like that in my career.
Yes, it's the challenge. I love a challenge. And then it's just the opportunity to create something for somebody. And I've heard it in a million places, and I've heard you talk about it with other guests and stuff, is having that creativity freedom. The person on the other side trusts you enough to do what your expertise is, and then you just run with it. And what's hard is people have different tastes. What you like might be different than what I like, or what the customer likes might be different than what you like. So you still have to kind of check that. That's kind of what's hard for me. I mean, I think we dealt with it a lot. Even when I was working with you, I still asked like, hey, what do you think of this? What do you think of that? Because I was scared of putting the time into it. And it's like, oh no, this is not what I was thinking.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you say that, because I think, I look back on that experience and I do remember, for lack of better terms, like your customer experience, the customer service that you provided. And it's like, wow, he's really being attentive to detail and asking me all these different ways that we can customize this piece, when I just want you to do whatever the heck you want. I really just wanted you to like put your own flair on it. And I know conversely, that kind of client can be very nerve-wracking too, because there really is no guidelines at that point.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I've had both. I've had ones that say, I want exactly this. I've had ones in the middle where it's like, you do what you want, but then next thing you know, they start, telling you what to do. And then I've had ones where it's total freedom. And
yeah,
that's why it's always tough when you get somebody new. It's like, okay, what spectrum are they on?
Yeah. I know before we started recording, you said you had a couple personal projects, but how regularly do you accept custom work?
So it's right now, I'm not really doing a whole lot of it. I think we have a lot of mutual friends that do shows and stuff in the, call it Central Texas, South Texas, Mid Texas region, that I'll do stuff for, like awards and stuff like that.
Oh,
I love helping people like that, because as you know, the car scene, it's a small community, and I wish there were shows a lot more, but we all know what goes into putting them on and everything. It's a lot. So I love helping people out like that. That stuff's fun. I've gotten away from a lot of it right now, because when I was doing a lot of customer work with the panels and everything, and doing interiors on these Model A's and everything, I had my car done. I had my blue Model A done. And I love just creating, just keeping my hands moving. I have to have something to do, something to build and everything.
same.
But then, long story short, a bunch of stuff happened in the personal life and everything. I got my own personal project, because I think everybody's probably felt that void where it's like, hey, I need something of my own again to just create from scratch. And that, when you work a full-time job that's, 50, 60 hours a week, and add 2 hours of commute time into that, you don't get home till, 6 o'clock at night or so. And then it's work for 3, 4 hours in the shop. And next thing you know, you got people asking you to build things, but you want to build your own things. It's just finding that balance is so hard. And I've heard it's really hard.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of a magical number that just kind of fluctuates with your seasons of life. I've noticed there's not ever really a set like formula. I've tried so much, like, okay, on the first 2 days of the week, I'm going to do custom work, and the last 3 days of the week, I'm going to do my work. And every single time I do that, it's like, no, you're not.
Yeah, I got pretty rigid for a while. Like, weekends are great. So my wife's a nurse. She's still in school. I've got a lot of time. She allows me a lot of freedom because she's busy with her stuff. So I get a lot of time in the shop. It's usually 3 days a week, Monday through Friday, I'll work in the shop. And then the other 2 days is like, okay, do stuff around the house, gym. And weekends are typically, 10, 12 hours a day in the shop, Saturday to Sunday. That's where I get most of my stuff done. But I
Okay.
have to have really clear objectives to get things done. I have to have a plan. I'm a huge overthinker, so I'll spend tons of times on YouTube researching things, ideas, literally just overthinking how to do something rather than just diving into it and,
Mm.
doing it.
So I know I want to talk about this really quick. I know your wife is like super supportive of your career, which is so cool. And you post pictures of her coming out and like doing welding and stuff with you sometimes. Is that something that she's like passionate about, or she just likes to see what she can do? Or
Yeah, she just loves it. I mean, like I said, she's a nurse. She's a go-getter. She works her ass off. I'd tell you what, I could never in a million years do what she has to deal with in the hospitals and everything like that. And not to
true.
mention work full time and go to school at the same time. We've been married since 2020. I know that, but as far as dating, you wrap all that in, it's been a lot longer than 2020. So yeah, she loves coming down into the shop. Like, I want to weld. I want to learn to TIG weld. I want to learn how to MIG weld.
It's cool.
Or what are you doing? And then just kind of give her a like, you know what, you're going to do this door panel. And it kind of started with that blue Model A, and she bead rolled one of the panels and punched the dimple dies, did the layout, center punched everything, did kind of went through the whole process, and
That's cool.
just have at it.
That's cool. Has there ever been a piece that you've completed that you accidentally messed up that you couldn't fix, or that you were like, oh man, how could I fix this instead of starting over?
Yes and no. There's been the ones that are just, it's so far gone, and
Yeah.
I've made the mistake of trying to fix it.
Mhm.
And especially when you think of a three-dimensional piece, I think there's a tail pan on that 1950 Chevy that I'm building for myself, and it's the whole width of the rear of the car from taillight to taillight, so I don't know,
Yes.
48, 50 inches or so. And I spent days on it, just trying to do the reverse curve and all these different components to it and making it match up. And I was fighting it, fighting it, fighting it. Things were getting worse and worse and worse. And finally, I think I literally just chunked it in the trash can and got a new fresh sheet of metal, even though it's called 40 hours. I don't say wasted because I learned a lot,
Mm.
but you start fresh. And then all of a sudden it's like, and of course, I kind of just set things down for the day. Let's go upstairs, relax, don't think about it. Come back a day or two later and jump on it, and it's insane how much of a clear, like, things just work. It's so weird. I
Mm.
can't explain it how they just work, but you know,
Yeah, because when you're in that moment and you're trying to like force it to work, you're like, if I step away from this, it will never get done. Everything will fall apart.
yes,
Everything, it's going to be a nightmare.
yes, yes,
Like it's taken
exactly.
me like 8 years to learn. Just walk away. Like God's going to give you another time to do this. It'd be way more stressful if you stay at the easel or stay at the bench and keep working. It's going to be way more stressful.
It is, yes, 100%. There's so many times where I don't have a temper, so it's never like I'm throwing a hammer across the shop and I physically ruin the panel because I did something stupid like that. I'm not like that, so that's pretty good. But there's times in my mind it's like you want to do that. Okay, that's when it's time to, okay, put the stuff down,
Mm.
walk away, come back at it, and
Yeah.
it's just things will work out a lot better because you're not stressed, you're not fighting
Yeah.
things, and
So do you generally, when something's going on in your life, like whether it's bad or stressful, you generally don't try and get into the shop, or do you use the shop as like a peace-filled time, like something that you can get away from all the stress in your life or get away from the schedules?
it's a combination of both. It depends on what it is. As I mentioned before, I'm a big overthinker, and I definitely have to be in the right headspace to create. If
Mm.
there's something like weighing on me, it's going to be a distraction. And there's
Mm.
certain things I can do to clear my head, but then there's certain things where it's not going to work. If and I'm sure you know this as being an artist, but there's so many things that if what I'm doing in the shop at that time involves a lot of thinking and creativity where there's no roadmap for it. There's no just one or two ways to do it. It's literally like there's a million ways to do it, and there's all these options. That's when it's really hard because I have to be in the right headspace. If it's something where it's like, okay, I know how to do this, or it's, I don't want to say simple, but like easier for me because I know all the steps to it, or it's just welding. You're just literally put the welding hood down and you know you have to weld just point A to point B, and you just crank the music and go. That's when I can use it as a getaway when it's something like that. But if it involves a lot of creativity, that's when it's really hard for me to, and I struggle with it really bad with distractions outside of the shop, being able to do what I need to do.
Oh man, you're so not alone on that. So it's so well said. I feel the same way. Like it's like the mindless stuff. Like for me, it would be like building a canvas or cleaning brushes or organizing the studio or I mean, honestly, I hate to say, it, but even like answering emails, like those are things I can do without worrying about what's happening all around. Get a new sketch made for a client for a new project. It is next to impossible to get anything on the paper if I don't have a clear head.
Yeah.
So I totally understand. This podcast is brought to you by Alpha 6 Corporation, professional quality paints and tools for artists and craftsmen alike. From lettering enamels, acrylics, and specialty textile paints to brushes, tools, and accessories made right here in America, Alpha 6 Corporation's product lineup is created by artists for artists. With unmatched customer service and a dedication to their craft, I am so proud to partner with Alpha 6 Corporation. In my studio, I use their carbon fiber maul stick, artist series brushes, and durable enamel paints. Whether you're a beginning artist or a seasoned professional, you can find inspiration with their do-it-yourself painting kits and monthly subscription boxes. Use the affiliate link in the description of this podcast to create with the same tools and paint that I use daily, and ultimately support a Detroit-based company that fosters creativity with makers from all over the world. How did you initially pick this craft up? Like, did you see it on YouTube and you just decided to try it, or was there someone in your life that kind of brought it to your vision, or how did that work?
So social media, honestly, I guess when I was like high school or whatever, I had an 87 Chevy truck that I kind of rebuilt. So I've always kind of been into trucks, cars, gearhead, whatnot. And I went to school in Houston for machining and building race engines. And
Oh, wow.
that same gearhead drive thing, I did that for a while locally here out in Canyon Lake area. And it was all right. It was just kind of repetitious, and there wasn't a lot in it. And honestly, the money wasn't great at the time. And I've always also worked construction, so that's
Okay.
actually how I got my current job. I've been there 14 years, I guess, at where
Oh
I'm
my
at.
gosh.
And
Wow.
and then in short, I do my day job is concrete work. We build the big concrete I-beams for bridges, and then stadium components. Like we built Cowboy Stadium, A&M, all that stuff. So very different from working in the shop and creating. And that's why there's that huge divide of, the day job to this. It's not like I paint cars for a living or do auto body or something that's still kind of
Yes.
related. It's construction. It's totally different.
That might be a blessing because a lot of people that I've talked to that have like an adjacent job to what they do for like their craft, they get burnt out a lot faster, you know?
I definitely see that. It's definitely two totally different pages. And I'm learning a lot too, just as I progress in my, you know, day job career. I'm learning a lot as far as like, how businesses run, stuff like that. So, and of course it pays the bills and allows me to build my shop like how it is now or whatever. I've
Yeah, and it's
been fortunate
amazing.
enough to where just keep investing in yourself and you're really never going to go wrong. And, tools typically don't depreciate on things like that. So, well, yeah, trade schools back in like 2007 and 8-ish
Okay.
in Houston. And, like I said, I was around cars, but I lived in an apartment. Didn't have any machining tools or anything like that.
Yeah.
You're broke, you're just trying to get by type of stuff. One person in particular, you've probably his name's Jamie Jordan.
Oh
He
yeah, I've
posted
met
about
him at SEMA.
yeah, super super talented guy. He's kind of the one that I first followed that did bead rolling, and I'm like,
Yeah,
this stuff is
same.
cool, and I just was really fascinated by it. So I bought the bead roller. There's actually like his version or whatever. I saved up a
Oh
good chunk of
wow.
change to do it, and it was awesome. And then you start messaging people, you start learning more accounts and following more stuff, and then the private groups on Facebook and stuff. You just kind of get more involved in that little small world of literally it was a group of like 100 people, and
Mm.
they're scattered all over the world, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
And I started doing the bead drawing and teaching myself. And honestly, I don't think there was anything on YouTube at the time in like 2015.
No, just so I don't lose this thought, like in 2014 or before is right when I started following Jamie on Instagram, and I actually custom ordered a piece for him for my brother's car, which is a 71 Duster, and he made the package tray for my brother's car
Really
when he was building that, and he still has it in his car to this day, but I was only him doing that. Like I'd never seen
yeah,
anything like that artwork before.
super talented guy. And it was really cool seeing how much it's probably been in the last 10 years how much that little thing of bead rolling has taken off. There's
Yeah.
a community page on Facebook, a private page or whatever. And it's called I Love Bead Rolling, and I think Jamie started it back probably around that time or whatever, and then it kind of progressed. And there might be, I don't know, 2,000 people in it now, but still a really tight knit group. But how
Yeah.
much that bead rolling art has become more readily available to everybody because
Mhm.
there's other people making the machines that are more affordable. There's bukus of videos and footage online of as far as how tos. Of course, you get 3D printing involved now. You can make your own dies. You factor in CNC for all the engraving that they do and everything now. I mean, it's totally progressed. It's really cool to watch and see. Just watch it kind of take its course.
I was thinking about this on my last YouTube video I'm uploading, and I was just kind of asking out to the universe, like if they thought that social media was net positive or a net negative for creatives. Because like, we were just saying Jamie was like the one all person for bead rolling, like he was the go-to guy. And now it's like, you can pretty much find that in every community or at every car show. You can find a guy that does that, maybe not as well. But would you say it's net positive or net negative to have like a saturated market on social media?
It's a catch 22. It's obviously a net positive when you're getting into the industry
Yes.
and you want to learn because you have so many resources at your disposal. I mean, I remember Googling things, just trying to find old
Mhm.
posts of chat forums or whatever where people are describing how to do it, and
Yeah.
it's from like 2007 and stuff like that. It came such a long ways, and it's awesome for, like I said, if you're getting into the craft
Mm.
of that, and it could go for anything, honestly. But it's kind of a negative because you're never going to be that person that kind of is so this isn't necessarily a bad thing, I guess, but you're never going to be that one sole person that everybody goes to that can do your signature brand and get marketing deals. No, he had Mittler. He was with
Mittler.
Mittler
Okay, yeah, it was the
Colors.
Mittler booth that we went to at SEMA. I'm sorry, this was like in
Yep.
2014, so it's been a minute, but
Yeah.
yeah, so he like was like sponsored by them and all the, and I think that's still possible as artists in any industry, but it just is way more challenging, like to become seen
It
that
is.
quickly. Not to say
It
that he
is.
didn't work for that at all, but I'm just saying now it's a little bit more challenging.
Yeah. No, it definitely is. And I mean, there's still a lot of companies that recognize like talent and everything. And I know my buddy Sean Rose is over there. He had that nonprofit Spreading the Love. He does a bunch of stuff with Eastwood and Jamie and all of his stuff.
Okay.
He's going to bring a bunch of the bead roll into to actually like high schools and stuff around the country to actually implement it at a much younger age. So that way in middle school and high school, people can get exposed to this stuff. And then, I mean, they could be freaking masters of their craft by the time they're, 18, 17 years old. So
I
pretty
know,
cool to
and
see.
like you said, you have so many more tools at your disposal as far as like if you can afford to start building your shop like at 17, 18, like it's incredible to think about what they will be when they're in their 30s, it's
Yeah.
kind of intimidating.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's, I don't say I'm jealous, but man, it'd be sweet because you just get that much of an earlier, jump start on things. You're just that much better off by the time you're.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on the whole like catch 22 thing because you think about like I'm thinking right now about like a 17-year-old person that wants to get into like creative entrepreneurship. Like when I was 17, I didn't really have any like person or thing to look at to say like, yeah, okay, this person makes a living the way I'm currently making a living. And it just kind
Yeah.
of blossomed out of nothing. And now I'm thinking like if you're 17 looking at that, you're like, oh, that you have like a million more options to choose from. It's almost overwhelming. And looking at my son, I'm just thinking like, gosh, I don't know. Like I hope that, and there's also a lot more comparison. You're not just looking at the people in your high school class that are bead rolling. You're looking at like, everybody on in the world on social media bead rolling, which could be a good
Internet.
thing or
Yes.
a bad thing if you know how to
Yes.
handle comparison.
Yes.
So I don't
Yeah.
know. There's so much to that. It's a deep dive for sure. I think about it a lot now that I have a son. But
I bet. Yeah.
how long have you? So I know you're an LLC, but how long have you been in business, like full time, if you will?
Yeah. So I established Maier Metalworks in 2020. I guess it was probably summer, August or something like that. And I started at that time because I was bead rolling all sorts of stuff. Things are awesome. And then I guess it was my wife's dad passed away in 2020, and we had to take care of a bunch of things. So
Okay.
fortunate enough to, I was able to build a shop at the house here and get set up here because I've always been a big, I guess, advocate for being able to work from home or have your hobby at your home.
Mm.
I started when I first started building my car. I rented a shop from a buddy and super grateful for them for allowing me to rent it. They had welders and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
kind of started there. And then I jumped around a lot to El Paso twice,
Oh, wow.
taking my whole shop, packing it up to and from twice, and then back to San Marcos and then building the new shop in Staples. So I always tell people that car that I built, that blue one, was like, it literally was all over Texas and literally as a little mobile shop. And I built it all on the road, painted in the driveway in El Paso and in front
Really?
of a, travel trailer and all that
Well,
stuff.
yeah,
So
that car's kind of infamous in this little area of ours. Like everybody knows that car, you know? So you said it was a Model
yeah,
A I never really knew what it was. I was
yeah.
just like, that is just the coolest blue rat rotted car I've ever seen. But it wasn't a rat rod. It was so clean and the paint was like this really cool satin blue color. I don't know. It was just a really cool, different. It was a very unique build that even a non-car person would be like, that is just a really unique designed car.
I appreciate that because that's exactly what I was going for. I mean, I'm sure you remember Welder Up, that Steve Darnell, he built
Oh,
one
yeah.
back in the day. Cool as hell. It makes, 2,000 horsepower, three, I don't know, whatever. It's cool. But it was just that. It was its own piece of art, but it was still very ratty. It wasn't painted as rust and whatnot
Yeah.
and all that. But I was like, I want to build a painted version of that,
Yeah.
something that's a little more, not shiny, but just like catches your eye more. And so
Yeah.
that's what I was really after.
That's way cool. And so, yeah, I'm excited to see what you do with these other two, three builds that you have going on in the shop because I'm sure they'll be just as cool. Today's podcast is brought to you by Dupe the Room. A lot of you listen to this podcast in your car, and with Dupe the Room's essential oil diffusers for cars, you can transform your commute into a 5-star hotel experience with their luxury scents and sleek diffusers that clip seamlessly onto your car's existing air vents. Dupe the Room fragrance packs come with 3 different scents, 2 metal diffusers, and a reusable unscented oil stick pack that you can customize and refill when ready. Dip the stick into any of their hotel-inspired fragrances, then place the stick into the diffuser, customize your scent strength, and hit the road. My husband and I share our daily driver, and with a blend of leather, lemon, and sandalwood, our favorite scent is number 1. It has a great balance of masculine and feminine aromas. Ditch those bulky vent clips and tree-shaped air fresheners and invest into an affordable and reusable alternative that ensures a great smelling ride for up to 6 months at a time. Head to dupetheroom.com/Kate Cook for 10% off your entire order. Why did you become an LLC?
Well, I had every intention of, I still do someday, I'm going full time. I'm still learning a lot in whether it's business or just my craftsmanship as far as what I'm capable of doing. So at the time I was doing just probably 99% bead rolling stuff and not to discredit it at all, but I kind of got burnt out on it. And just kind of like we just talked about, the market started to get flooded with more and more people doing it because it was more readily available to people that wanted to do it. So I felt like it was just like, okay, I need to take the next step and I need to start doing more metal shaping. I need to start putting radiuses on things. I need to start learning, what it takes to make a door panel, to physically chop a car and, build new sail panels and stuff like that. So I started doing that after I formed the LLC. It was kind of doing all that and then to do more and I wanted to continue to invest in myself. So I took a couple shop class or a couple metal shaping classes with Jesse Miller. Clark Gilly is out in Grand Junction, Colorado, and I've been fortunate enough to kind of work with him and on some stuff, and then take a couple of his classes. I guess bottom line, there's people out there that have a wealth of knowledge that I've been fortunate enough to be able to kind of communicate with, and when I get stuck on something,
Yeah.
kind of communicate with them and learn and just trial and error as far as what to do. So just wanted to continue to invest in myself and learn more.
Got you. So that's kind of what I was leading up to, is asking you if you had planned to make this a full-time gig, but something that you said, well, a lot of the things that you're saying is that you prioritize learning, which I think is really a unique perspective on life, is like always being in that I need to learn more mindset, it's a good humble way to look at things. What defines good craftsmanship to you?
Being able to create something is a kind of step one, and then integrity and I mean, just bottom line, just doing it the right way. I mean, there are multiple ways to do things, but at the end of the day, as long as it's done right, when somebody looks at your whatever it is you're making, and there's the stereotypical stuff at SEMA or whatever, and it looks like the shiny bright diamond on the outside, but then you look in the inside and there's these bubblegum welds and whatnot. And I mean, I get it. I don't like judging people's work and, talking bad about it just because I wasn't there building it or whatever. It's just teach their own whatnot. But it's that's what it comes down to, is being able to, if somebody literally dissects your piece and wants to look at it from the inside out, it's like, okay, this person actually put what they needed to into this. And that's another reason why I wanted my name on my brand is Maier Metalworks. It's, you can't hide behind anything. When your name is on that piece, it's your last name. I mean, it might be your kids, it's going to be your wife. It's personally something for me. That's something that I wanted, and it felt really important for me.
Wow, man, that is so cool. I never looked at it like that. I can personally attest to, like, obviously my company's Asphalt Canvas. My name's not in it. It has its own issues because people are like, huh? Thankfully now I'm a little bit more well known, but yeah, I think I've definitely subconsciously been able to, if I had a massive failure or something, I felt more comfortable with addressing the business as like Asphalt Canvas instead of my studio, or like be more personal with it. So I think it's definitely like a subliminal messaging thing. And it's a legacy thing, which I think there's a huge through thread with this entire podcast, that craftsmen care so much about what they leave behind. Your last name, it means so much. And even with AI and all of the technology, like nobody can take your last name. And that is so powerful.
Yeah, that is very true. There's one time I specifically remember you're talking to somebody on one of your past episodes about AI. And then I think it was something along the lines of, are you worried about it? Like if it's going to overtake more for like, designing art. Their answer was pretty much like they're not too worried about it because it's a fad.
And he was kind of just saying, like, just like photography became its own fad and it became its own little niche in the art world, the AI thing will do probably the same thing, which it's already starting to.
I've messed around with it just for simple curiosity and everything. And it's like, if you look at like radiuses or lines or parallel things or whatever, it's a lot of how I get ideas on, like, oh, that would make a cool shape that would be, complement this or that or whatever. So it's, even if I spit something into even Google Images or Pinterest or AI or whatever it may be, and you're trying to find something, you're looking for like literally this much of a photo. It's like, okay, where that line meets that line, or with that color contrast, with that contrast, that's what I'm looking for. And then boom, that sparks an idea to like build off of or whatever.
That is such a good point because, I was so anti-AI, and I still pretty much am, but when you think about it as a tool, which a lot of the people I've spoke to have said, like, if we can use it as a tool, it's no different than if I were, or you were, to type in something on Pinterest or Google. Yeah, if using it for that, I think, more power to you. I don't even mind, because I don't mind if people come to my own website and get inspiration for their own work, but like, don't,
Right.
What I have issues with is when it's like copying the work, and a lot of people have issues that it's like using the work to make new work, which
Yes.
it's really tricky right there. It could be its own conversation, because what difference is that if you were Googling the picture and you got inspiration from a pink Cadillac I painted and did your own? It's kind of it's a touchy subject. But talking about your inspiration, can you explain that a little bit more? Like, how do you get inspiration from like a flat 2D object to take it into a 3D form?
It depends on if there's a rule. Like, I mean, of course, if you're going to try to make a fender, it needs to look like the other side. So you're kind of set in those ways. But if you have 100% creativity freedom and there are no rules, I mean, it's literally just, that's where I start to look at shapes and radiuses and what goes together. And I can scribble, I can draw, I can do whatever sketches or whatever. But it's like, I have a really hard time. For example, if pretend you weren't an artist and you wanted me to build something, it'd be really hard for me to transcribe what is going on in my head for what image I have in my head and try to explain to you what it might look like. And you as an artist, we'd probably have a lot easier time communicating of like what it might look like. But to somebody else, they might struggle with it because it's so hard to see it. And unless you can take it and mold it out of, I've used welding wire, like welding rod wire, and you start doing the patterns and stuff. You've probably seen that online. You can do it's called a buck. So you can kind of make it from a like whatever, you can bend it from rod, you can bend it from cardboard, you can start making this three-dimensional thing. So I've done that before, and that helps get a visual for like, hey, this is what it'll look like. Because things change once you get it from a two-dimensional sketch on paper or the fab table or something on chalk, and then you start bringing it to this, 24 by 24 by however wide, and oh god, this thing is this big, and I need a whatever radius on this part, and it's like, oh, that doesn't look right because it's this big now. So things change a lot. And I'm not gonna lie, it's a lot of trial and error
Oh yeah.
if I am creating something like that.
Yeah, so you do a 3D rough draft sketch basically with what you were just describing. That's so cool. Like
Yeah,
I'm the same way, like something will pop in my head and I'll be like, "Oh, this would make such a cool painting." And then I go to like execute it and you either don't have the tools or the skills or the knowledge to get it all out at the same, there's been projects I've come back to and I was just talking to the last woman that I just did an interview with and she was saying the same thing. I have projects in a drawer that I've opened up and I kept in there because I didn't have one of those three things to finish and complete that at the time. But now
yeah,
when I open that drawer and I see that project, I'm like, oh, I could do that. I could finish this in 5 seconds, because you've built that wisdom and that
yeah,
knowledge of how to actually, and you've invested in yourself, like you said, with your tools and your shop and things like that.
yeah.
Let me, I know you said you didn't, we can cut this part out if you don't want to talk about this, but like friend to friend, I just really want to ask you, where do you think your creativity stems from? How, because I know you talked about like kind of your background and your faith and that you kind of tried it and it wasn't for you. And a lot of people have said that their faith has, God is the one that has given them their talent. And like I said, we can cut this out, but I would really like to know
Yeah.
just friend to friend, like how you think about that.
I don't want to sound like selfish, but I feel like it comes from me and it comes from the people that I'm learning it from. I
Okay.
guess that's kind of
Okay.
the easiest way to sum it up. It's
Yeah.
I'm responsible for my own actions. I'm responsible for whether something comes out really good or really bad. I'm not going to blame somebody else for what I did, or whether, and that could be a good or bad thing. And that's
Right.
just my personal opinion on it. If I did really good on something, it's because I invested my time and my resources and my energy into that. And it's the result if it's bad. If I get this, I mean, we've all probably had it, this horrible piece that we've made, and you're in a horrible mindset and you're mad, your emotions come out on it in a bad way. And
Hmm.
next thing you know, it's like, who's to blame for that? Well, okay, what kind of a mindset were you in when you did that? And
Yeah. I that's a super valid point. I never really considered that. I mean, I did consider that, but not as like a sole thing. Like, you get like I'm an artist because I learned how to do this. But I also
Mhm.
believe to some extent that I was born an artist. Like, I feel like this was kind of given to me at birth, like my calling for terms of
Mhm. Yeah.
Christianity. Do you believe that you were born with the craft of metalwork? Like, since it's something that you love to do and it comes somewhat naturally to you, do you believe that you were born with it or?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I really do think, actually, I think my wife and I were talking about this the other day because she asked me if if I had an internal dialogue in my head. I don't know, fast forward or whatever. I think in shapes. It's She asked the right questions to get me to start thinking. I was like, you know what? I think in shapes. Like I mentioned before, it's like it's lines and parallels and radiuses. Everything I look at is like it's kind of like that. So I do think you're born with that. I think it's
Mm,
part of your brain, how your genetics maybe. I don't
yeah.
know. It's something that's inside of you for how you function, and I'm sure you could resist it and kind of learn a different way if you didn't want to be an artistic person. But I definitely think there are artistic people that are born to
Mm,
be artistic, whether it's woodworking, painting, sculpting, anything like that, that thinks in that realm. And then there's people that, they may not have an artistic bone in their body, but they excel at other things.
yes.
They're scientists. It's definitely embedded in you in some way or another.
Okay, that's super cool. And so you pretty much don't believe that that is like from God. You just think it just that's just how it is.
Yeah, I just think
Okay.
that's just how it is. It's how you're born. I don't know.
Okay. So I've never been able to have but maybe two or three open conversations with people about this, and I really appreciate their insight. And with that said, when something goes when a pro let's just keep it in the realm of craft, like your craft and your and what we're doing like in our workshops. If something goes wrong, like we've talked that it will, how do you get out of like that funk?
So I'm struggling with that exact thing right now. And
Oh,
I've been in
really?
this
Okay.
funk. Yes, I've been in this funk for probably, I mean, it's stretched out. It's come and gone within the last 2 months, and then you throw the holidays in the mix. It's just a
Oh, yeah.
distraction. Yeah, so that's why it's prolonged even further. But there's a portion of my car that I'm working on, and it's mindless work, and it doesn't involve a lot of creativity. So I'm just like, it's I'm gapping the doors. It's got to be done. If you don't do it right, it's going to look like crap. It's anyway. It's like I don't want to do it, but I have to do it. So I have to push myself to do it, and then I'll post a project that I built. I built this little stupid firewood holder, and like you will do anything except for do what you need to do. It's like I needed to create something from scratch and build something, and it was fun. And then
And it
but I also don't
worked.
want to be that guy. Yeah, exactly. No, it worked.
Yeah.
It made me happy and everything, but you still got this unfinished project that you have to do, and
Yes.
it's like you keep struggling to go back to it because I don't know. I mean, I'm like I'm 40% of the way done, and it's like I know I just have to push through it, but I have to be in the
Yes.
right mindset because if you're not in the right mindset, you're gonna want to half-ass it and take
Mhm.
shortcuts, and that's like we talked about before. That's not what I'm about. So I want to make sure that I want to do it the right way, and
Hmm.
I want to devote my time and energy into it.
Oh man, I can literally think of one project right now that it was like the biggest kick in my ass because I got to that moment in the creative process. Like I think every creative thing goes through this. It's like that funny little meme where it says like this is good, this is crap, this is okay, and this is
Yeah.
excellent. It's like the U curve. But every project goes through that. But I can think of one specific project. It was a letterboard, and I was very pregnant, so maybe that's what had to do with it too. But I got to this one point, and I wanted to shut my business down. It got me so bad. I could not even go in my studio. I couldn't even look at it. It was so bad, and because it had a deadline for some big show up in Dallas, I had to just
Yeah.
push through. And that is like one of my least I can't even look at the pictures. I took like one cell phone picture of it and I just blindly gave it to the guys at the shop and they were like over the moon with it, thankfully. Well, to my face they were. And but to this day, like it just makes me cringe so bad. And what's so sad is that I came up with such a cool idea for the project and it could have been so cool, but I didn't give it the time it needed to get over that weird funk like what you're in. And I just pushed
Yeah.
hard. It just looked pushed. It
Yeah.
looked weird, like manipulated. I get what you're saying with like the just do anything else on the planet that will at least give you some like feeling of achievement. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't think
Yeah.
there's an equation. There really isn't. It's just time and understanding of yourself.
Yeah, that's 100%. I wish there was a perfect solution for it, but I think everybody's different on how they react and cope with
Yes.
things and do things. And I know what needs to be done. It's just physically buckling down and doing it is
Yes. Well,
hard.
I wrote down this thing from your Instagram because I loved the quote as well. It says, it's actually just like on your bio. It says, develop an appetite for achievement and anything is possible. And so one of my questions is, what traits do you think helped you in your art business or belief the most?
I think it still goes back to integrity and doing things the right way. And if you do things the right way and you're just an honest person,
Hmm.
things will work out. I mean, I
Yes.
think one of the questions you asked me previously, and it might have been in an email or something with, what do you do if something goes wrong or unhappy customer or something like that? I think we've
Yes.
all had to deal with them.
Yes.
It's just kind of communicate. It's,
Mm.
hey, what don't you like? Why aren't you happy? And of course you're going to have those off the wall ones where you can't reason with them. Okay, great. Maybe I give you a refund or let's figure out a way to make it work. But that's the bottom line is just communication. So I think
Mm.
it's, it just goes back to kind of your core values on if somebody looks at a piece, it's going to be done the right way, and
Mm.
you're going to stand behind it no matter what.
You said integrity and communication, and really those kind of go hand in hand in both, especially in business, but also with your craft. Because, I mean, if you're taking
Hmm.
customs and you're doing that kind of thing, like you have to have good communication. If you are not a good communicator, do not accept custom work because it is nearly impossible to
Yeah.
get to the point. I mean, because some people that you're going to work with, they aren't good communicators. So if you're not a good communicator
Yes.
and they aren't either, it's kind of like a marriage. It's like, is this going to work? I don't know. I'm not thinking it's going to. So,
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Another key one is probably creativity too.
Mm,
That's what I think drives a lot that I stand behind is being able to be creative, like we talked about before, being able to
yeah.
pull, I mean, 1% of an image you see and be able to pull something from that. And if you look at 100 images, you're going to get to create your own piece of art. And
Hmm.
I cross-reference a lot of things with like I might look at appliances, vent hoods, and things like that. Like, okay,
Okay.
what looks good in the home architecture world of
Yeah.
things? Okay, how can I apply this to like a custom car or something like that? And I mean, obviously, we're not going to put a vent hood in a custom car, but it's like, okay, these lines do this. It's complemented by these radiuses, this finish, this accent. A lot of weird stuff like that. I'll start thinking of. There's no rules in art. You don't have to stick to your trade or whatever. I mean, they can
Mhm.
spill over into, I mean, infinity. So I
Yes.
don't know. That's kind of the way I think.
That is so interesting. I believe that everybody is innately creative in some way, but so I maybe differ with you on that front, but I think you're so right when you say like there's a very small percentage of people that can see like 1% of an image and then come up with like a whole breadth of artwork or a whole car or
Hmm.
I think that's very true. And I started like when you're saying like, oh well, I find inspiration in appliances, some people would be like, huh? But at the same time, I just started this new collection of artwork, and you say a vent hood inspires you for a shape on a car, and I saw a banana leaf, and it reminded me of a shape of a car that I saw at the Amelia Concourse, and then I combined them and made
Yeah.
a painting out of it. So that's so crazy. I love that
Yeah.
concept.
Yeah.
That is
Yeah.
awesome.
It's super cool.
Well, let me ask you, I would love to hear, and you kind of shared with me when we were talking about framing and stuff, the piece that you did for your wife's dad when he passed. I think that's what it was. It
Hmm.
was a frame. Wasn't that?
It was I did the frame, but I did the I guess call it the artwork or whatever, where it was kind of CNC'd with the picture and stuff behind it. And
Maybe this piece, but maybe not. What's your favorite piece you've ever made?
that one is definitely closest to my heart, of course. It has the most meaning by a million, just because,
Yeah,
of course, it's my
sentimental.
wife, and I
Yeah.
took a lot of pride in it. And what's crazy is there was a lot of thought and design that went into it, but as far as like physical metal shaping and stuff like
Mhm.
that, it wasn't a lot.
Yeah.
It was just putting the pieces together to give a one off. Nobody, not to knock on Hobby Lobby, they're doing a lot of cool stuff, but nobody wants to go to Hobby Lobby, buy a frame, put a photo in it, and say, "Here you go for something for a very special event." If you
Yeah.
have the capability of making something, I think that's the most precious thing you can give somebody is your time. That's the one thing they don't make more of. So when you give somebody your time, that is the most valuable thing you can give them in anything. So it goes back to the handmade things. Handmade things they just hold so much more meaning as opposed to something that is mass produced on Amazon or whatever.
Yeah.
But full circle before I totally go off track.
Very
Favorite
cool.
piece is that one's probably closest to my heart, but there's an interior I did for I don't even know where the car is now. I think it's in South Dakota or something like that. But it's a copper aluminum interior I did for a car, and it was probably one of my better high quality, most intricate pieces as far as what do you
Like
call it? The dash,
technicality.
the tunnel, the seats, the deck lid, hinges, cup holders, all the trim. It all just flowed together very well. So that one's probably one of my favorite.
I love that concept of when you're giving something to somebody that you've made, you're not giving them just the piece or the artwork, you're giving them the time that you spent on that. And I just read a really
Yes.
interesting book called The Thousand Unplugged Hours, and she talks a lot about like giving the most valuable asset that you have to somebody is time. And I never correlated that with giving somebody a painting or even valuing my painting as such, like when I'm selling it. So that's a really
Yeah.
interesting perspective.
Not a lot of people see that. That's the
Yeah.
unfortunate part. You got people that see a custom painting or a custom piece or whatever, and they
Mhm.
see only that piece. It's like, oh, I could print that or I could do this, and they figure out the way to make it less meaningful.
I can tell you have a very passionate drive for the craft part of it. Do you think that when you transition to a full-time, can you foresee any challenges with that?
there'll be there'll be a ton.
Yeah.
like I said, I feel like I'm trying to pave the way too. And this might not be till I'm 50 years old,
Yeah,
50,
yeah, that's fine.
whatever. But at least, I've got a shop, I've got tools. I'm continuing to build that. I'm continuing to hone my skill set. I think a lot of the challenges, I have a hard time with saying no to things. I've got
Mm.
everybody under the sun, they want, like, because you own a welder or something, like, oh, I want to do this, and oh, you're a fabricator, can you do this? And it's like, no, man, I don't want to build you a gate, or I don't want to build you a fence, or I don't, you know what I mean? Like, I want to create, I want to do something really cool. So,
Yeah.
but they might be a good friend, so you have a hard time saying no. And it's just like, and then you get stuck doing these mindless projects, and yeah, they might pay you a ton of money, but you don't want to do them,
Yeah.
and therefore you're not gonna be happy.
Yeah, for sure. And for sure. And I mean, just speaking from my own experience, you may have to take a couple of those and just like suffer through it whenever you do open up. I mean, hopefully by then, if it
Oh
is when
yeah.
you're 50, you'll have like this fat retirement and you can just like enjoy your life and, have some creative, cool
Yeah.
projects on your bench. But
Yeah, I'm hoping to have enough kind of under my belt as far as like what people, if people go to you, they're typically going to you. 80% are going to go to you for a specific reason,
yes.
and that's what I want to kind of hone in on over the
Mm.
years as far as like what I do. It's kind of, you graduate from, me personally, I've graduated, like, kind of the bead roll, and I'm challenging myself more to do the custom cars. I love the 30s, 40s, and 50s era cars just because they have so much shape, and the bubbles and the fenders and all that. I just love that aspect. So that's really what I want to focus on, is somebody
Okay.
brings me a car to chop. Somebody wants me to I don't want to do rust repair on stuff, but I get it. That stuff comes with the
Yeah.
nature of building custom cars. But I'd love to build a car the way I want to build it and then sell it. That'd be a perfect world, just like I did with my Model A. Like, I was fortunate enough to build that, and somebody offered me money for it, and then I was able to sell it. So
Yeah.
that'd be a perfect world if I could do one car like that a year, and that'd be great.
Dude, pe
But the way I
people do
want.
that all the time. I mean, I think that's such a blessing that you have a literal physical experience of doing exactly what it is you want to do as a dream job. You've already done that, so you have a taste of that dream client, like how it was done, what you did, how much it cost, what time you put into it. I think that's so special. Hold on to that.
Yeah, no, definitely.
I've just kind of picked that up in my own business. Is like I have a couple people in my career in my 7 years doing this that stand out to me very poignantly of being like the dream client. Like that's because they've given me the creative freedom and they've like their specific want for design and what they wanted for custom art was right up my alley. And so
Yes.
I kind of keep those forefront of mind thinking like if I can get like 5 or 10 of those clients a year, oh, what a dream.
How do you find those? Is it just pure luck that you stumble upon clients like that?
Yes and no. Two examples. The first one is a car that I did, full body car. I did a full race letter livery on it. He found me
Hmm.
through word of mouth. The other one found me through an online search on Google, which was a big deal for me because I'd worked really hard on getting like Google listing verified and having like the SEO on
Sure,
my
yeah.
custom page. I've worked so hard on doing that. We talk about watching YouTube videos. That's what I've done on that. And then the one I'm thinking of right now is just through legitimate, like being in the same place as those people as much as possible.
That's very smart. 'Cause like you said, I mean, you named it perfect. It's those dream clients that, and it might be different for each person because it's what you want to do. And then
Mhm.
that makes the work so much more enjoyable, is
Mhm.
A, when you do it, and then when you have the creative freedom to do what you want. And then of course they're going to be a happy paying customer
Yes.
that respects what it takes to get from point A to point Z, along
Yes.
the way.
So true. And I would say the biggest thing that I made a mistake in doing early on would be taking cell phone pictures of my work instead of like legitimate, real photo, nice, like taking the time when a piece was done and actually taking time to photograph it. That was a big one. And asking for
Really?
reviews. Because as soon as I started asking for reviews, that helped my Google ranking come up. It helped my Facebook page stay relevant.
Yeah, yeah. It makes sense. I mean, it's
Yeah.
algorithms are wild nowadays.
Oh, yeah.
Social media is wild. Yes, it's the part of business that nobody wants to do. I see people that posting every day, they leave the clickbait comments or the clickbait posts like, I put 400 hours into this and tune in next Friday for the, and they build up to it and whatnot. And I get it a little bit, that's okay. A little bit of it's necessary, but
Yeah.
I have such a hard time being not authentic along the way
Yes.
that I can't like, I don't know, I'll take pictures, I'll take some videos and stuff or whatever, but I, I kind of swing both sides to where it's like I'll put a lot of time into taking pictures and videos because I know I'll make a reel out of the process. But
Yeah.
what's hard for me, there's a lot of like some of my processes, they might take months. You got this whole, conglomeration of photos and videos and stuff, and you have this plan to make this reel. Fast forward
Yes.
6 months, you can't find the photos. I don't know. It's really hard for me to do, but I know it needs to be done to stay relevant. I don't know,
Yes.
but I'd rather be creating than taking the photos.
I totally feel that way because there's paintings that I've done that have taken 6 months, like you said. The way I've started
Yeah.
doing that is like and it takes a lot of like mindful dedication. Spend time in the shop, and then whatever pictures you took, put them into a folder on your phone titled like whatever work that is.
I've done the folder thing,
Oh, you
and
have? Okay.
it's yeah, where it's like, but it still starts to get like cluttered. Or for example, my one folder is 1950 Chevy. Well, there's 1,100 photos in there because it's a 5 year long process or whatever, and
Gosh, yes.
yeah, because I document everything. I have to be diligent about going back and going through them or whatever. But
I think you're being hard on yourself because your social media is great. Like I was just on there to do research for this conversation, and I think the music always goes like kind of scarily well with what you post, and I love it.
well,
I think it's
thank
great.
you.
Yeah, of
I
course.
do try on some of it. But it goes back to that thing to where if it's always that reel that you devote a ton of time, a ton of editing, you get the perfect footage and everything, and you get it flops, whatever, but
Yes.
then you got the one that you just throw together, just, you get bukus of views and stuff on it. It's like, what the hell?
I
It's
know. It's
that, like I said, I'll
literally a
never
guessing
understand the
game.
algorithms.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. I know. I totally understand. And it's, Morgan, my husband, he and I went on a Route 66 trip with our old Dodge early in my career, and he took a video of him adjusting the valves while the engine was running. And it was at
Yeah.
night, and it was on an old cell phone. And so the video is like super grainy. It's like a 11-second reel that he posted to social media in like 2 or 3 years ago. For some weird reason, that video went viral, and we started making like hundreds of dollars a month on that singular video.
Really?
Yes. It
So
was so cool. And we were just dying laughing because like there was zero effort put into this reel whatsoever.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
it was just so
yeah.
funny.
The kind of unscripted conversations like this are the best that just kind of get creative
Oh, for
juices
sure.
flowing, and that's how I'm most passionate about, is when you can actually talk to somebody that understands it or can relate to it
Yes.
or whatever. And I will say you do a really good job putting questions together, and all this. I've listened to, I'm not gonna say I've listened to all of your episodes, but I've definitely listened to more than a handful, and just the way it's articulated and the podcast and everything, it's really good stuff for sure.
Thanks, man. Well, it takes two to make a good podcast. And so it's not just me asking the questions. I'm very appreciative of people like being vulnerable with me and answering like hard questions.
Definitely.
But how I want to wrap this up is because I think you'd have good insight on this is I always like to ask if you have a big piece of advice for somebody wanting to get into creative entrepreneurship.
I would say if it's something that you really want to do, I mean, you got to definitely dive in. I've heard it before. It's really hard, and like I said, I struggle with it being 1 foot in, 1 foot out. You can't do both 100%. It's just you don't have enough time and energy
Mm,
in yourself or whatever. So you really do have to decide, what you want to do, and it's literally I'm right there in that middle right now of balancing on that fulcrum of doing both. Of course, you got to make sure you have a plan. I'm not going to go in blindly, but
yeah.
I'm an overthinker. So naturally, I'm also going to be an over planner. So make sure you have a plan, make sure you have a passion for it, and make sure you want to do it actually. Because if you dive in doing something you don't want to do, or you don't know, you're
Mm,
always going to know 100% of it. But if you don't know 90% of it, and next thing you know,
yes.
you're just like, oh, shoot, I don't want to do this anymore. Yeah, I guess you can go back to what you were doing, but,
Yeah.
nobody likes to kind of to walk away or whatever. So
Yeah.
yeah, commit.
Yeah, I think and that's why I think it is hugely beneficial to start as hobbyist, if you will, doing what you think you're going to do
Yeah.
full time, even if it's a food truck. Like, I think it's very beneficial to do it
Yeah.
like part time to see if it's something that you can do for
Yes.
1,000 hours. Like we were talking about earlier with the gates that people kind of ask you to do. Had you gone into business saying, like, I'm going to make money making people gates because maybe the first one they gave you creative freedom, then you're stuck making gates for like the rest of your career. And it's very hard to change lanes when you've kind of solidified, like, I'm the gate maker. And I'm not saying that you're committed to always having, you know, the gate job, but you can transition slowly out of that if you realize you can transition.
Yeah.
This is very difficult if you have a 10-year career doing gates.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, people grow and people change too. And I mentioned before how I'll look at all forms of art. If you look at
Yeah.
you look at music, you got people like Post Malone going into country, Jelly Roll, who was in hip hop, going into country, and these are these hardcore artists that were in this total left field, and then now they're emerging into here because that's the way their personal lives are taking them. It's what they want to do, and I mean, people do change along the way, so I get it. I mean, people can shift what they want to do for sure.
I love following country music stars because they're a little bit more grassroots, but like music in general, there's a lot of like overlap in how people get their, like, especially old time, like the Beatles and, all the different like cool vintage artists. It's like, I love learning about how they became famous because there's a lot of overlap in creative entrepreneurship of like how they started, what they struggled with, and then they made it, So that's a good point. Even if you start as the gate maker and you want to be the car maker, like, you can transition. It just make sure that you try it first before you announce, this is what I'm doing.
Yeah, you're gonna need to be committed. You're gonna need to, have a plan, and you're gonna get a lot of pushback because all those people that want gates are gonna want to throw money at you to pay you to do it. But if it's something that you don't want to do, you just have to stick to what you want to do. And, as long as you're good at it, you let your work speak for itself too. That's what I've always said. It's, that's your signature, is in your quality of your work. And
the brand, it's the name, it's the integrity of the work.
Yeah.
That's exactly what craftsmanship is, for sure. If you could tell people where they can find you on social media.
Definitely Maier Metalworks LLC on Instagram is my main, probably where I post everything.
And I'll have those links down in the description of the podcast and of course on YouTube as well. Thank you so much for being here tonight, and I'm sure I'll see you at the next car show we're at.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
Thank you for listening to the Curated Craftsman. You can support this podcast and become a member of our creative community on Patreon. If you were inspired by this conversation, please leave a review, share the show, and subscribe.